So where are you joining us from, Sid?
Yeah, calling in from Brussels, Belgium today. I've been here since the weekend. I decided to do a one of my more spontaneous flight roulettes, and it's treating me well. There's always that I don't know. I guess everyone probably feels this, but this like friction or almost like a behavioral economics of like, should I go? Should I not go? Why am I doing this? And always, once you're looking backwards, it's like, I'm so glad I'm doing this. It was the perfect time. This is where I need to be. So that's how I'm feeling. It's a little solo adventure, and I'm loving it. It's a great city. How about you, Andres? Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from the suburbs of Chicago. And today I wanted to ask you about how you're feeling. Specifically, so you're in Brussels right now, you said, uh,
Yes.
Belgium. And it's a time where you're probably feeling a lot of different things. You're excited, new sights. This idea of seeing different things can really excite you. And I think human beings really thrive off of that, just getting new sights, seeing new things, feeding their curiosity, just that scratching that itch. I think partly that's why we're addicted to our phones and to reels and TikTok, etc., because we get that constant feed of curiosity. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot this past week. How I was traveling the world for a year last year, and I was always seeing new things, and I felt really happy all the time. Sometimes I got little lows, but usually I felt really great. Everything was new and exciting. And then I moved to the suburbs, and suddenly things started to slow down, and things aren't as exciting, things aren't as fun, and I'm wondering, like, why am I even doing this? Like, why should I continue playing this rat race? It it almost motivates me to just try everything else to try to escape the rat race. Even though objectively the job that I have is great and I'm doing exactly what I studied for, I kind of just want to escape the rat race. And I've seen a lot of people discuss online about how, we're creatures of the sun. We're not nocturnal animals, so all of our free time is mostly at night and on the weekends. So all of our happy time is spent working for the gain of other people. And maybe that's a whole can of worms, but that has made me really ask myself, like, what makes me happy? How can I maintain a certain emotional state? And I really want to understand my emotions. So, what do you have to say to towards understanding your emotions?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, and of course, one I share on many levels. So this last week, this topic has actually come into my mind, and the reason why I wanted to cover it for multiple reasons. Two of them are that I just had incidents actually at work or related that got me feeling down. One of them was kind of like someone had sent me a message, and it seemed to like implicate me in basically suggesting that I had dropped the ball previously in something else. And I spoke through it with my therapist, and he kind of helped me realize that, wait, I took this chat message and decided to read between the lines, decide why this was an issue for me. It triggered XYZ feelings from the past and came full circle and kind of bit me, right? Because now I'm like sitting here stewing about this and being enraged by some person's chat message, right? And it made me realize two things that I'd love to talk about. Um, one is that when someone says something to you, you are not being objective when you listen to it, right? Especially if it's digital, you're immediately ascribing your own meanings to it. And that makes it a very dangerous path to go on because now you've taken something and just taken implicit information into it, especially dangerous for someone like me. And this is something I also unlocked with my therapist, but he helped me realize that as a young kid, I actually had to do a lot of this contextual cues searching myself because my parents were not very expressive. It's kind of ingrained into the culture, but also just at home. That's just kind of how it was. So one of my superpowers is often the emotional intelligence and the ability to see what the other person's kind of seeing or thinking. And that's only, true to a certain level, but that is something I've been told that I do really well. And it's actually a survival instinct, right? If you can read your parents when they aren't saying any words, then you can start to piece things together and kind of prepare on how do you want to react. So when I saw this chat message, my brain, as it naturally does, bounces in 100 different directions and says, why is this person saying it this way? What's going on in their state of mind? So that was one part. The second was the rumination that happened afterwards. Just kept talking and thinking about it in like all these different, ways. And the solutions were twofold. One is that the therapist said, hey, really lean in to this person and understand where they're coming from. And if they did say something, where they might be coming from and why they're saying it. This helps become more objective and kind of take yourself out of the equation. Because when your ego is in, then you can't see anything. When you're clouded by anger, you're not able to see the other person's perspective. It's very much the victim mentality of why me versus, okay, there's a reason why this person is saying what they are. You might not agree with it. That's fine. But you're not blaming them, but you start to say, okay, this could have happened to anybody. It's not an attack on you. This person is doing this because this is how they operate. This is how their operating system tells them to act. So now they happen to have done this with you. And now there's more of a room for empathy and understanding that like you just now see the situation more objectively versus like being inside of the emotions. That's one. The second is for me, the takeaway was to start to personify our emotions. And as we know, anytime humans have so many going on at the same time, anger, joy, frustration, anxiety, all of these different things bubbling up. Um, so when I was on my flight to Brussels, I saw Inside Out 2. And if anyone's seen the original, I think it was just a masterful creation on like depicting how your emotions play a role in your everyday life. And this one was no different. I think is a masterful story and helping you kind of visualize where your emotions lie. And as I watched it, I just like felt unlocked and so seen because here I was like dealing with some of these issues this week and realizing if I was to start to see it this way, hey, right now I'm a little upset. Why? Well, I'm angry. And there's this little angry red little fella who follows me around in my mind and says, you're angry because of this past memory, other reasons. And that is the actual driving force of your anger. It's not this current situation. That's, I think, one of the biggest learnings I got from this was like, your emotions are tied to memories. They're not just like they're very ready to go new. They're like instincts. So since your emotions are like instincts, they're formed by previous interactions you've had, previous memories. So if someone today makes me upset and says something, it's because I'm kind of relating that to a separate experience I had that caused me this emotion. Um, so I think that's been kind of floating through my head in the last few days, and it's really impacted me. It's starting to try to stitch together where a feeling is coming from, why I'm acting this way, why this is bothering me. And at least for me is a huge unlock in terms of how I think about it.
This really reminds me of something called eye movement. This is senses. I can't even say it right, but I have it pulled up in front of me. EMDR therapy. I'm going to try to say it properly. Eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. I know I butchered that, but basically, desensitizing therapy. So basically, imagine a gazelle in the African savannah, and it's being chased by a cheetah. It gets away, but its adrenaline is still pumping, and it's scared, and it runs, even though it outran the cheetah, and cheetah missed it, whatever. How does it know to stop? How does it know when is it enough is enough? How does it know that it's safe, that it can relax again? Well, the only way that you can know is by seeing new things. By refreshing the feed that is your life, you're able to gain new memories and effectively replace those old memories. So your emotions are inherently tied to your memories, like you said, like that little green or a red angry guy inside of you. Whenever you think about something that's really upsetting to you, there are therapy techniques where they have you look around and make rapid eye movements, kind of simulating the idea of you running through a field or you running away from a predator. That way you have a refresh of your feed. So that way you overwrite those memories. So that is a practical takeaway that you can some therapists employ. Uh, and I think about it in the context of I mentioned earlier that uh, kind of trying to settle down and join the workforce after not working for some time, at least in a traditional sense, has really made me come to grips with this idea that, I think human beings as inherently nomadic creatures we've been placed into situations where we have to sit down for several hours on end and see the same sights over and over and over and over again. And of course, we're going to have memories from our past resurge, and we're not going to be able to deal with them because we, I apologize. I don't know if you heard that, uh, but because we don't have the opportunity to refresh that feed because we can't refresh our feed and we're sitting at the same spot all day long, seeing the same places, apartment work, whatever it is, maybe a little bit in between. We keep those old memories in the storage. But if you're traveling like you're doing now, or you're doing new things, you're being creative, you're doing different outlets, then you're replacing those toxic memories with potentially something more positive. So that little red guy starts to become replaced or focuses their attention on something else.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And actually, I'm going to stick with the Inside Out. What's it called? Analogies, because it was just such a good movie. The other really interesting part is in the second one, a new feeling comes in, which is anxiety. And since this girl Riley, she's going through her puberty years, like all of a sudden anxiety takes over and like starts shaping her and her belief system. So her sense of self starts to degrade. And instead of saying, I am a good person, she starts to say, I'm only going to be good if I get good at hockey. It's the only way I'll get respect. It's the only way I'll get XYZ. So I thought that was really interesting because it very much resonates in terms of how I end up thinking, or when I realize that there's a voice in my head telling me I'm not enough and I need to accomplish this to be of value. I have to provide this to be of value. So I think that's another piece in this workplace dynamic where society is literally programming us day in and day out that our value comes from doing work, from being educated. And that is definitely how I was raised as a first generation immigrant. Now you see some more kind of more than before cues that say, hey, as a human, you are inherently valuable. If you grew up thinking that I'm a good person, that I am inherently valuable, you're going to be less likely to live in that scarcity mindset, to have these negative toxic memories that you have to keep refreshing the feed. And I think that sometimes puts people at a heavy advantage. So whether you're doing this as a parent and you want to, create a nurturing environment for your kid, definitely important, right? Keep making sure you're reinforcing their sense of self and play. As adults dealing with tons of prior trauma, I think there's two things. One is constantly refreshing the feed. The other is finding a way to make those existing kind of memories, which are, by the way, temporally and spatially related, right? They're related to your setting. If that's at home in your same kind of office space working, or even at the office, if you're having to commute in, you have to find a way to make those happier environments. And to your point, I think like I'm just going to predict the future here, but when I come back from Belgium, I will likely come back refreshed and ready to etch away at whatever not good feelings are associated there. But in absence of that, you have to start doing the intentional things of those mantras, right? I am a good person. Just saying it to yourself. The things that basically we are very highly kind of like ridiculed for, right? Yeah, you shouldn't have to tell yourself mantras every day. You're too strong for that. It's silly, right? But isn't it more silly the other words we feed ourselves all day? That you're not enough, that you have to do all this other stuff. So we need to feed ourselves these mantras. That's one way to do it. And something that I'm going to hold me accountable to this when I get back is create more visual cues within my apartment, whether that is positive feedback I've received, other things. I keep telling myself I'll do this, but then I never do because I'm like, what if someone comes to my apartment and then they see this like silly little feedback wall that I have for myself? Why wouldn't I? It's crazy.
I'm half expecting you to have eat, love, pray lines all over your apartment now. Which, now that I say it out loud, it kind of makes sense. You have I've seen people's apartments with cheesy affirmations on it. And I mean, it's cheesy to me as an outsider, but yeah, if I were the one that put it up and if it makes me feel good, then what's stopping me, right? Like, for example, this weekend I bought a, a silly little porcelain book uh holder. I don't know what you call it, like at the end of the books, like book end, book stem of two little birds. Those two little birds is kind of right next to each other. I thought it was cute. I wanted to see something cute in my life that makes me feel good. And this is something that is discussed in the artist way. Julia Cameron says that as you start delving deeper into your own emotions and your creative side, you start to make things a little bit more fun for yourself. Your space goes from being bland and boring to, suddenly that little toy car you see at the grocery store. Oh, you know what? I want that. Or the little marbles, the little group of marbles, little whatever, little knickknacks, little toys. You start collecting them. Because when you're a kid, if you look at kids' spaces, it's 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 chaotic. It's like it's a representation of their inner state. And I think now we're kind of told like, all right, you got to maintain that certain rigidity in your life at all times because that's what being an adult is all about. And I almost think uh, that is the exact opposite of what you should be doing if you want to maintain a healthy state. Because part of refreshing your feed is introducing new elements to your space. Because sure, you might not be able to always refresh your feed, but you can always change it, make it slightly more interesting over time. And the people do in toxic ways, like people start deteriorating. You can, the classic example is a really messy desk, right? Or like just trash everywhere. But the other example is, plants, art, etc., things that may look messy but have a purpose in your space.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what all of these types of things are doing, of course, like you said, it's reminding yourself that you can be a kid continuously. It doesn't need to end anywhere. There's no societal shackle you have to start wearing, any of that. And all right, I think this might be my last time needing to go back to Inside Out, but it's so good that I have to do it one more time. And that's where my brain went. So I think these like cues, these things you do for yourself, they all fit into the level of being able to incite or surface up emotions as you desire. So usually, almost 99% of the time, emotions just start to trigger in our brains, right? Something happens to you, all of a sudden anger hits. joy hits, all of that. What if, as a human, you could say, hey, I have a basketball game today. I need to bring the joy. If I bring the joy, I'm going to play well. I'm going to have a good time. You become intentional with what emotions you want to conjure up. And when you're able to do that, I think that's level 10 of this whole journey. All of these different visual cues are there to help you. And at the end of the day, as humans, I don't think we can always be in that state of intention when we're like, we can just conjure up the emotions we want. But to me, that was what I was left with at the end of this movie, because that's what she says. Riley, the hockey player, the main character, she's like, all right, well, like, I'm going to go, whatever, we have practice today and I need to be joyful. My friends need me to be joyful. This is how I'm going to play my best hockey. Let's go. And there are certain situations where anger can make a lot of sense. And you need to, like people say, like, whatever, scream into a pillow or something. And you need to release your anger, something like that. So I think that is like the highest point you can achieve. And all of these kind of knickknacks and anything you do in the process of getting there is really, yeah, preparing you for this final level where you can start to surface up emotions as you'd like and get to your next best thought faster.
I love that. I want to add that there is never a time, and I'm going to use the inside out analogy as well. There's never a time where one of the characters from your mind goes into someone else. You can never actually make somebody angry. I know that's kind of weird to say, but you never actually make people happy. You never make people angry. You never actually put those emotions inside that person. I have never, and you have never been like, here's an emotion. Bloop. That's never happened. Every single emotion that you have ever had has come from within you. Those inside out characters have never left or gone or done anything but stayed inside of you. They have access to your memories, but they are always within you, which means that every emotion you ever had has arisen from you, and you have some say as to what emotion comes out. So if you're feeling angry, you're feeling this, you're feeling that, you can always stop and say, okay, I'm feeling this way because of me. No one else has made me feel this way. Always me. And I can learn to control my emotions, you know, but the amount of control you actually have, you can debate that. But I believe that you can learn to control your emotions. And you mentioned mantras, you mentioned setting your space, you mentioned going through the process of making it as easy as possible for you. Think to yourself, I'm going to bring the joy before you do the activity that sometimes doesn't bring you joy, but that you want to bring you joy. You can begin to slowly and surely control your own emotions. And this is something that I try to instill in practice with myself, but sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's a long week. By Friday, you're like, fuck all this, excuse my language, right? But you're just like, I don't want to do this. I'm sick of this. I hate everything. I hate all this. I'm gonna start hustling and do something else so that I can uh, continuously refresh my feed in another way. But at the end of the day, all those emotions come from within you. You have to acknowledge, okay, stemming from somewhere. There's an emotion, there's a memory tied to all this, and the more you listen to yourself, the more you can start managing it. And I think that's really tied to being honest with yourself, because being honest with other people is all about objectivity. It's all about, okay, here is the truth, the real truth objectively. Like, this is what happened. And sure, you can add some subjectivity, like this is how I felt. But when you are with yourself, you 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 have to listen to your emotions. You have to shut down that rational thought. Like, sure, the future might be like this if these things happen, but no, I feel like this, And I feel like this because of some emotion in my past. And I hate to admit it, but that's why. That's being honest with yourself.
Yeah. And the part I think, first off, I think it happened fast, but we left some pretty strong insights that I'd like to just summarize. So, like you said, getting to the truth, I think that was a good one of just like really being real with yourself and looking for the objective truth. If I think I understood that correctly, then I think that's part of it. I talked about being intentional about the feelings you want to conjure. So part of that is also awareness when you feel like you are um if you're feeling something you're not fully aware of or understanding. So, okay, I feel like I'm in a rut. I've been I just came to Brussels and I like, had this amazing day of travel. And today I've been a little bit, tired and not wanting to go out, a little more introverted. Okay, let's sit with that for a moment. Where is that coming from? Is there a past travel experience I've had that might be coming up here? And that can take you down if you follow that thread to an understanding of why you're feeling this way. Then once you know where that feeling came from, you can talk to yourself, right? It's like, hey, well, I know that, when you went to Jamaica that one time, you had this type of experience and you kind of, started to feel like in a slump. But this is different for these reasons. One of them being you're not in post college and can like have money and enjoy yourself. That's just a starting point, but whatever. Um, all feelings, like you said, all feelings come from you. I think that is a wonderful one. If someone else, and someone else can't make you feel upset, if someone else says something that makes you feel upset, um, that's actually a feeling that you have. Once again, tied to a memory, tied to something else about yourself. And especially when we think about negative feelings, anger, frustration, all of those, they're usually stemming from past memory. And some of the more negative ones, they're also the stronger emotions. So once you're able to identify that's happening, maybe for you that's anxiety with needing to travel. Okay, but where's that coming from? Is it from a past experience? Why is it so strong? And like any emotion that's so strong is probably worth like evaluating. It's like, why is this like coming up so strong? I guess the only one I wouldn't want to is joy. In my case, I do need to evaluate joy even because I'm bipolar. So it's like that's a dangerous path to go on when you're in a place of like good stability, I think, is like where you want to be because then you can evaluate the emotions, you can be intentional, be aware, and kind of let them mix in a proper way versus like anger's taking the wheel.
Yeah, I think this is really powerful thing, really powerful stuff that we're talking about here. And we should try to come up with some takeaways, some practical insights so that we can ensure that we have the next best thought. So for me, being intentional about or at least practicing my emotional judgment. So if I catch myself being angry, being upset, being sad, being lonely, being whatever, being happy, the more I start to recognize those feelings and give them a name, the more I'm able to identify where they're coming from. Um, and at the same time, the more I do that with myself, the more I see that other people that experience really strong emotional outbursts are actually projecting something themselves. So when you start to play this game of trying to acknowledge and realize where are these things stemming from, this uprooting of emotions that are buried deep, you start to get really good at it. Um, and just being good at acknowledging them is a step in the right direction. It doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect and masterful at what you do. But I love the idea that even trying to love yourself is loving yourself. So by even approaching the problem or the idea that, okay, I'm an emotional creature in a world that wants me to be a rational, objective machine, you can begin to start to approach it in a way where, okay, I need to find the balance. And here is how I can find my balance by learning to embrace the emotional side while not neglecting my objective rational side.
Yeah, it's really like meditation, right? Anytime you catch yourself drifting, you've actually improved your ability to of awareness. So it's similarly, even if you're just trying this kind of looking for this emotional awareness, you're already in the right path. So it sounds like maybe that's a good way to even think of this. It's like a progressive ladder, right? So that's part of the package. The other, like we talked about, create those visual cues so you can conjure up feelings when you want them to. So, of course, we all want to live in a state of joy, feel bliss, feel these more positive emotions. So, building those around your environment, I think, is important. Refreshing the feed, whatever that might be. That might just be a complete pattern interrupt. I'm sure for a lot of our audience, and myself and you probably included, travel can be hard sometimes. It's hard to make the time. It's hard to have the budget, all of that. So in the absence, when you cannot travel, which I think we both recommend as much as possible, find other ways to pattern interrupt, to create those, to refresh that feed. Maybe it's a different path when you're going to the coffee shop, when you're going to work, listening to a different podcast you never had before. Those kind of reset moments, I think, are very important to capturing potentially a new feeling or something else you can jive with. And then also, I think related to when you are become aware of a feeling, I think it's an interesting game. At least I think this was kind of what my therapist was training me to do, which was once I feel that feeling, if I know that it's actually something else in the past, I ask myself that question. So, okay, I'm feeling angry. What situation is very similar to this that I've had in the past that caused me a similar emotion? And the 2 times I did it, when I took another 2 minutes on each of them, I was able to identify that. Both times, they were caused by either an insecurity from the past or a very similar frustration or, like, dynamic. So, that one's a tougher one. I think we should go into this deeper in another episode. I'm happy to even kick off the next one like this and go very specific. So, I'll leave it with the cliffhanger. But overall, what I'll say is, um, eh, your emotion that you're feeling now is once again being recalled from a separate, similar situation or time that you felt that way. So if I'm frustrated because I feel like I can't respond, that might be related to another time in life where I was frustrated because I couldn't respond because had to resist the urge to fight someone or something like that, even though this time it's just about a chat message. So, in that sense, the situation's not the same, but the feeling is very similar. And understanding that is very important to unlock where you want to go next.
That sounds like your next best thought. So I'm gonna leave us with a question. So we know that understanding your emotions is important to live a happier and more fulfilled life. But how is that related to control and to controlling your outcome? When you mentioned anger, anger I think is intimately tied to control. So is joy, so is sadness, so is anxiety. Every single one of these emotions is tied to control. So that how do you think emotions are tied to control, and how does understanding your emotions better relate to control? And I think we can talk about this next week. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, only next best ones.
Great.